What does it look like to build a streaming show from the ground up, no budget, no safety net, all while keeping your day job?
This week, we're talking with Chandler Dean, comedian, speechwriter, and the host and creator of Abolish Everything.
We get into the surprisingly good argument for keeping your day job, why AI might actually be more of a threat to speechwriting than stand-up comedy, and what it means to build something creator-owned in an industry that usually takes everything.
And how a show about abolishing things became its own argument for why human creativity still matters.
The creative economy is broken, but some people are still making it work. We're here to find out how. I'm Anna Marie Cox.
And I'm Open Mike Eagle, and this is Past Due.
Chandler Dean is a comedian and speechwriter. He is also the creator, host, and executive producer of Abolish Everything, a comedy debate show on Nebula that has become the platform's most watched new series ever and just wrapped its second season. Chandler, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan.
Oh, well, that's good. So then this first question won't frighten you because you maybe heard it before. It is the first question we ask all of our guests on this show, since we are a pod that explores how creators are navigating this economy. I'm going to ask you, when's the last time you were worried about covering your monthly expenses?
I have been thinking about this question, and I basically have two answers. In terms of, in general, when like with expected monthly expenses, I trace it back to the summer of 2018. I was just out of college. I was cat sitting a hairless sphinx named Darwin in order to not have to pay rent that month. And I was offered an internship with West Wing Writers, which is a speechwriting company where I still have my day job to this day. So that was it in terms of, all right, how am I just going to have enough money to like make it through to the end of the year? And then the next year I went to the dentist for the first time in like 5 years because I was then able to.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And I had some big unexpected dental bill that if I had paid it, I could have paid it, but it would have been all of my money. And so then I had to go and find a second opinion on whether my teeth were broken. And thankfully I did. So those were the things that came to mind.
You've been fairly steady since then.
Yeah,
the speechwriting has given you a basis to build upon.
No question. That is like the rare kind of steady writing job. I work for a firm that writes speeches and op-eds and other forms of communication for, companies and nonprofits and advocacy groups and celebrities and politicians and things like that. And that's been what's been paying the bills ever since then. And I feel like I have a lot of friends who, it's unusual for them to have a job for more than 2 years. And I've had the same one for close to 8 now. That's why, because it's giving me the freedom to do all this other stuff.
How does the structure work in a job like speech writing? Is it a set amount of time it's asking for you? Is it sometimes you're pressed and you have to turn things in on a deadline? Like how does it structure and how does it interact with what you do outside of work?
Yeah. So, we work in client service. And so it's a matter of each person who works at the firm is on some number of client teams, that are on, like retainer contracts or project contracts, whatever. So it all adds up to, I'm getting emailed, every day with the latest from each of my clients. We'll schedule calls to talk through the project. Then I'll go off with my team and get the writing done. And then it's just about, basically meeting the deadlines and then just also being around in case there's any like last minute fire drills. But in practice, what it has meant is that because it's deadline based and also mostly remote work, it has given me a lot of flexibility where I've never had to cancel on a show due to work. I've gone and done the show when maybe I shouldn't have and started writing a speech at like 11:30 at night afterward. But because there's not that like sort of synchronous need in the evenings, it's the perfect job to then host and appear in comedy shows and just like participate in that world, because I would know, well in advance if I ever needed to be available at those times. Unlike if you're, a speechwriter for a senator, where, it's much more the norm. Like, oh, this news story just came in. We need you right now because they need to go give a comment in an hour. That's less common.
Something that comes up a fair amount on the show is the tension of having a day job and being a creative in some, I guess, more creative field. I know speechwriting can be kind of creative, right? Maybe it's a good fit, but a good way to answer this question, which is, does a day job give you the emotional and intellectual and time bandwidth to pursue creative endeavors more than maybe not having a day job? Like,
yeah,
Mike and I have been very open about our stories of getting it to the end of our rope financially and thinking, maybe I need to get a jobby job so that I can continue maybe to do other stuff because I'm so stressed out about even. Sorry.
Speaking of stressed out.
Yeah, I'm so stressed out. My cat is also stressed out. I touched her the wrong way. It's anyway. So the tension between the freedom and kind of even intellectual and creative space to do the endeavor and the ways that a day job can provide the stability that you might want in order to be creative, but then also it takes up a bunch of time. So do you feel that tension at all?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that this is a dichotomy that for a lot of people, they just don't have the luxury of choosing the other way, because I agree with, I think, what you were getting at, which is like, okay, even if you have some money saved up, it's not long for most people after trying to pursue their creative dream full time that they are having to come up with ways to make money anyway. And so then you both have to do the work that earns you money, but also hustle to get that work in the first place. And the lack of that part, the lack of having to figure out how I am going to make the money, is both like a boon in terms of time and also a boon just mentally, of like just not having that constant kind of stress over me. Because I just feel like it's something that is, even if you're doing really well, it's still something that you could stress about, not knowing, okay, 3 months, 6 months from now, how am I going to be making money, even if I've got all these like freelance gigs now? Yeah, if you can afford to not have a day job because you're independently wealthy, that's obviously better. And I think that some people look at people who do that, don't realize that's how they're doing it, and say, wow, this person just hustled their way into creative success. But for me, that was not going to be an option. So I think the next best thing is a job with that flexibility. It's more intellectually challenging, or like maybe requires more creative effort than if I just worked at a desk job that didn't engage me creatively. But again, the fact that it is kind of like deadline based work, not work where I'm having to be like on my feet all day long. Like my friends who are trying to do comedy and working as servers, they get into it because, there's the flexibility in that job. I can just have someone cover my shift. But in practice, you're constantly getting asked because someone else wants you to cover their shift to suddenly be available. So I feel like the promise of that doesn't always work out. So I feel very, very fortunate to have this. And I always encourage people those who do have the choice, like, maybe should I, is it too much of a commitment to like try to go into like marketing or copy or like some way of using your creative skills, in a more monetizable way? Like I just always think that, one, that kind of work, is often more flexible, and two, like it gives you something else to learn how to do, and like informs you and gives you more perspective and hopefully makes you better at that thing. And three, it creates urgency in the time that you do have to get stuff done. Because I have found that when I am getting some, random free time available, when I have had more time than I need, I end up kind of doing just as much, but it takes longer. So knowing like, no, I have to get this creative thing done right now or it won't get done is good for productivity as long as I'm not, burning myself out.
I want to follow up really quick because you said something that pinged a very recent conversation, which is the idea of being a creative of some kind, performer, writer, and trying to transition that into a steady day job that's also kind of creative. You mentioned marketing, right? And maybe copywriting. I talked to a friend of mine on Sunday who had been a successful journalist. And when the industry started to contract, she moved into marketing, and she has been almost completely replaced by AI. She is struggling. She actually told me the reason we talked is she's filing for bankruptcy.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Medical debt, old debt. It's not fair, and we were kind of comparing notes, and I had, I've thought about stuff like that just to get my, something under my feet to stop stressing out so much, because the stress, I think, is hurting my creative output. But it also turns out that what I do, what comedians do, can't be replaced. Like, I really believe what Mike does, what you're doing at Abolish Everything, these are the things AI can't do, right? Like, so I don't know. I mean, do you, looking at where you are, looking at maybe the people you know in the industry, I don't know if you've given any thought about this.
Yeah.
Do you think that actually there's a maybe ironic resilience to some of the creative endeavors that we're doing? Like, I mean, I've heard people using AI to write speeches even.
Right.
Like, I mean, I'm sure they won't replace you, but that is a thing that's happening.
Well, it is a legitimate concern because people are doing it. And I think that there is a, like when we talk about it, like West Wing writers, like the value that we bring to people, a lot of it is like just as much about like creative, like collaboration and partnership and like thought leadership and all of these things, like the big ideas, rather than just, oh, we write really well and we're going to make whatever you're going to say anyway sound good, right? And so the fact is, like, people will come to us because they have some big keynote that they want to like make news or disrupt their industry, or they want to say something that's never been said before. And what AI is really good at is distilling everything that's already been said before. So I think that's a value. I do think there's a challenge where, historically we've been hired by people who want that, and then they discover, oh my God, these people are incredible writers. Let's have them write all kinds of things for us, including things that maybe are just like, can you polish this up? And, I do think that less and less people are coming to boutique speechwriting firms for, can you polish this up, or can you tighten this, or just like any of those kind of like final touches. It's much more about, but if they want to punch it up with some jokes at the last minute or some other creative flair, then yeah, we are going to be better at that. And not only are we going to be better at it, we're going to be there. I think that the big part of it, which connects with the comedy Abolish Everything stuff, is like, it's not just about like the quality of the work, because even if AI could identically replicate whatever I would come up with, the reason that it resonates is both because it is true and hopefully well written, but also because people love to know that somebody else is feeling the way that they do, thinking the way that they do, that someone surprises them by kind of sharing that point of view or introducing them to a point of view they hadn't considered before. It's all about like, wow, I can't believe someone else is out there, and like the implicit connection that comes with that. And so that, I think, is why AI can't replace comedians. It's not because currently it's extremely corny and can only do recycled dad jokes. It's that even if it were better, it's like, but that's not why I go to a comedy show. I'm not just doing it for oh wow, what beautifully structured jokes. I'm doing it to connect with the person on stage.
What it makes me think about, though, is I think there might be some irony in that your steady day job might be more under threat from AI than Abolish Everything.
Yes, I can see that.
I'm not saying you personally. I mean, West Wing boutique writing. I mean, sort of speech writing in general.
Yes,
because in part, speech writing, very idea of it, it's accepted that the person giving up there and giving the speech didn't actually write it themselves.
Right.
That's part of our understanding of speech writing, right? Is that we don't expect every person at the podium to have literally gone through it.
Yes.
And written every word. And most speechwriters are anonymous too.
Yeah.
So
I totally see that. I think that what is invisible in a lot of speech writing is the kind of back and forth that happens beforehand. I'm thinking about the fact that AI is so obsequious and will just be like, here you go, like no matter what you asked for. And the difference between that and the speech writing process, especially for like really high profile politicians who are like grappling with like, okay, what news do I want to make? What do I want my key messages to be? How do I want people to think about this campaign? And also, how do I make sure I'm not stepping in it? Like AI is much less likely to tell you, hey, wait a minute, like this thing that you want to say is going to offend some people, or it doesn't consider like a key part of your audience that you're like leaving out. AI doesn't push back, you know? And so I definitely agree that like, yeah, if you just want to have passable copy, then yeah, people who are currently making money writing passable copy are going to be in trouble. But I do think that like strategic advisory part of things is harder to replicate because yeah, AI is, unless you can tell AI, okay, hey, be critical of me, like, you know, the next time I send you something, you know, look out for XYZ issues. But if it doesn't occur to you to ask for that, then that's just something that I don't see you know, someone who's not a human being who's like steeped in this moment of culture and news to be able to do.
I want to be very clear before I pass it to Mike. I'm not saying that you personally are threatened or that boutique speechwriters are threatened. In fact, I think all of the stuff you're saying is true. And I also want to go down on the record and saying I think it would be bad. But I am just like talking to my friend, my poor friend who made this decision to switch into marketing because she thought it was going to be a more stable career.
Yes.
You know, and then finding that that's a place where people, and I would also say with marketing, the top level marketing in the world is not written by AI and never will be, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't know about never will be, but like you for the same kind of process things that you're talking about, a really good marketing agency, a really good advertiser is going to consult with the client, going to push back, going to like find ideas that weren't there before, right? But vast majority base of the pyramid for that industry, that's not what's happening, right?
Yes.
Like Wyden and Kennedy is not going to get replaced by AI, but your local mom and pop marketing agency might be. But
well,
what I think
and they may replace their lowest rung of employees with AI is the other thing. So I definitely think that's valid because it's like I feel like you're seeing that's what you're seeing across the board in industries. You're seeing it in like engineering too, where it's actually like senior engineers are not necessarily losing their jobs. It's the fact that those entry level jobs where the whole point was like, all right, just sort of dump as much time as possible into the code so the people above you don't have to do that. Like those jobs are becoming obsolete. So I am definitely concerned, and I agree like that the entry points are starting to disappear, and people are like, don't all just go to the most senior people. They can use AI to help support them in the actual, like, say, in the writing process, which also a lot of like speechwriters are doing. Like there are plenty of speechwriters who are like embracing AI to like start a first draft and, you know, punch it up and that kind of, and then jump into it to save time. And so I think that's all happening. And it is very concerning about like, well, then who are the experts going to be in 10, 20 years in this field if there's no structure to train them, because it's that work is deemed to be more easily completed by Claude.
But I think the good news, and this is where I was saying, I think the irony about like you having your day job as a speechwriter and then doing Abolish Everything is like your labor of love, presumably, is that things like comedy and music and opinion writing, I think, actually have a vibrancy that, in theory, even at the lower levels, can't be replaced by AI.
Yeah.
If we can support the people at those lower levels, right? But like even you're a comedian that's just starting out, not famous yet, is going to write better jokes or potentially write a lot better jokes than AI ever would be.
Yes.
Right. And so I think that there is a irony there and perhaps good news, which I don't feel like we talk a lot about on this program.
Well, it's also just more compelling. It's more compelling to watch someone earnestly try and tell a bad joke and learn from it and that kind of thing than it is to see AI procedurally generate a joke that is structurally sound, because again, it's about the story of the person that's doing it. So I do agree. I mean, the tricky thing is like there's still all of the other problems that make those industries unsustainable. But at least, yeah, I agree. I actually don't think AI is going to be a big problem there. And maybe, I mean, the other thing that I am hearing about where things are going in the attention economy, and like increasingly every industry has to have some kind of arm that's like, all right, how do we compete with people's attention on Instagram, etc. And like they are finding that like authentic kind of human, I think engagement is what breaks through. And so there's a world in which maybe people who are just like really solid writers and can execute clean, crisp copy are in trouble, but people who can like figure out a way to make a really engaging front-facing video. There is like more work than ever in that way. And there's a part of me that's like, I do kind of think creative people are in sum total getting more work now than ever because there is more output than ever. It just may not be what we imagined, growing up.
And a lot of times we're not being paid the rates that we may have in the past.
This week on Patreon, Chandler Dean, if you could abolish one thing in the creative economy, what would it be?
Hear it now and get ad-free episodes at patreon.com/pastdue.
Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The RealReal.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The RealReal? Game changer. I earn more, and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 38 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The RealReal than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The RealReal. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 site credit when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
So Abolish Everything. I know I've seen this as a live show. I've seen a few clips. It's a video show on Nebula. I believe it's also is it a podcast too?
It is not also a podcast at this time. Yeah.
So is there a world where it becomes successful enough and generates enough revenue where that becomes your main mode of income? And is that a reality you're pursuing in some way?
Well, my employers at West Wing Writers, if you're listening, for the next 50 years to this firm. And yes, it's definitely possible. I think that it's an interesting dynamic where, so I was doing this show on my own, at first at Under St. Mark's and then at Caveat, just like any other kind of monthly produced like stand-up or variety show. And then when it got picked up by Nebula, they brought in some production design, they brought in cameras, they brought in microphones and and editors and a social media person or two to help edit clips and all of these things that have up-leveled the show and made it like a TV show. My work is still kind of similar. I do a little bit more. I review clips and I review the edits of the show, and like casting is a more, I used to be able to just truly do whatever with it because it was very low stakes. And so now, casting takes a little bit more time. And so there's a little bit more work and we do twice as many shows. We film 2 in a month, back to back. But the long and short of it is it's basically like an expanded version of what I was doing previously, which is that as my sort of part-time endeavor, I was spending every moment I could outside of work, making it happen. And I've still been able to do it. So yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if, if we made the show, let's say the show was running all year round instead of like one season a year as the current cadence has been, at that point, yes, like it would take up enough time that I would need it to be my sole endeavor, and I'd be able to make it my sole endeavor just based off of what we'd be able to, how much income I'd be able to get from it. But it's also currently like, if it continues at the rate it's been going, and it just sort of goes steady, I could be the part-time host, creator, and executive producer of a streaming show, which is the new reality. But it's also like, I don't have to be subject to, the anxieties of like, does my whole life fall apart if this show ends? I would love for it to continue indefinitely and creatively. Like, I want that more than anything. But if it does end, I don't lose my health insurance. And I don't have to wonder, can I stay in New York? Because it's something I've been able to juggle with my current day job. So the answer is yes, but it doesn't have to be. It's not as if, there could be a world where I do Abolish Everything and speechwriting for however long that both are. I mean, the speechwriting may come to an end before Abolish Everything does. So, whichever lasts longer.
I'm so interested. You said that your show was picked up by Nebula, and up until this point, all of the content that I'm aware of on Nebula is stuff that people were basically doing on YouTube anyway, but are empowered to put more resources into stuff, make longer versions, put more time into the work they put on Nebula. What was that process like? I mean, did you pitch the show other places? Like, how was it? How were you able to sell it to Nebula? I hadn't heard of anybody doing that before.
Yeah. Well, they definitely have a unique model that's kind of analog or like analogous rather to the way they work with YouTube creators. So over the last few years, Nebula has been making more and more of their own original content, which, the existing model was, when it was founded, like, okay, we've got a collective of sort of like-minded, really sharp creators, a lot of like video essayists and science creators and people talking about really smart stuff in an engaging way, putting their stuff early on Nebula or putting some exclusive content on Nebula. And, basically, all right, if you like one of these creators, there's a whole bunch more like them and you can support all of them by subscribing to the service. People pointed to it in the same way they would point to a Patreon. And over the years, as it's picked up more subscribers and, more of an audience, Nebula has been in more of a position to make their own stuff and basically say, hey, you might have come here for this one creator, but this is a full premium streaming service like any other you would subscribe to, and we've got this other stuff for you to check out. And so the way that it worked with Abolish Everything is that, so a couple of my dear friends in comedy, Adam Chase, Ben Doyle, and Amy Muller. I've known all of them for years when they were, doing stand-up and writing, and I met a couple of them actually through West Wing writers. Adam Chase and Amy Muller both briefly worked there as speechwriters. But they all now work for Wendover Productions, which is one of the bigger YouTube creators involved in Nebula. The head of Wendover, Sam Denby, is the chief creative officer of Nebula, or the chief content officer of Nebula. So they had all done Abolish Everything. They had all had a great time. And then I think there was some interest at Nebula in, okay, as we expand what we do, we want to do comedy, but what's the right way for this service to do comedy? As you say, Mike, it's, like for people who are used to seeing like sort of interrogative, argumentative video essays. And this is a show where comedians get up and they make arguments with visual aids next to them in like kind of a short and snappy way. And it's at Caveat, this venue for like intellectual nightlife in New York. And so, Adam and Ben and Amy, I think, all kind of spread the word about Abolish Everything at Nebula. I got the chance to meet with the CEO, Dave Wiskus, as well as Sam, based off of that. And like, we had a great conversation where it was just like immediately, like I kind of listed out all of those things and they listed out all the things that they were kind of interested in, like, like getting more of a presence on social media and like engaging with the talent in New York, like, having a pipeline for comedians in New York to get a bigger audience and, interact with Nebula for the first time. And there were just so many ways in which it lined up. And it was one of those things where it's like, I've been doing comedy for, a dozen years in New York now and thrown so many things at the wall. And I feel like the way these things happen is like, it feels completely impossible until one day it's weirdly easy. And that's what it felt like. It felt like a really great match. And so after that, we got a green light not too long after that. And the way it works is that Nebula and I share ownership of the show. So I like they do with a lot of other creators, and I also have the right to continue to do the live show as I was doing it before. So I'm doing like a live version in LA just on my own, like I would have before. So they give me a lot of like flexibility to make this show the way that I always have with their help. So it's like very much a partnership, more so than, what you would expect if someone just, bought the show, and did what they wanted with it.
So what is the benefit then? Like, is Nebula covering expenses for putting it on the air for you? And then Nebula you're getting a greater distribution
for the show
for it.
Nebula has a budget for the show, so they have the responsibility for making the show. I get paid to do it as part of that budget. And like we're reaching like a global, where previously it was like a New York based show that was like slowly building momentum among our live audience. Now, people all over the world have seen it. So that's the benefit on my end. And also the ability to, we're able to pay performers more than they would get paid just doing a live show based on like splitting ticket sales. And so we're both like giving them like, a better deal than they would get doing live comedy in New York most of the time. And in many cases, their first TV appearance or streaming appearance, whatever you want to call it.
We talk a lot about platform uncertainty on here. We talk to a lot of people who make money on YouTube or Twitch or,
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans, exactly. Yeah. So, and all these platforms that are ultimately tech platforms where a lot of times the leadership, there's a little bit of a distance between the leadership and the talent that's forward facing and dependent on the platform. And I know in a lot of, on streaming platforms in particular, where there's mandates for original programming, a lot of those winds can change real quick from quarter to quarter. How dependable does that relationship feel right now? Is there any anxiety that you have around them suddenly deciding that they want to redirect resources elsewhere?
I have to give credit to the CEO of Nebula, Dave Wiskus, who's also the founder. And he's arranged a platform that is creator owned, like, some huge, I don't have the number in front of me, but it is a huge constellation of creators that share ownership of the platform and like ultimately control it. And from the beginning, when we had that first initial conversation about the show, he was like, we want to make sure that whatever happens here, you're better off afterward than you were before. So in the event that Nebula decides not to renew the show, I can continue doing it. And just as I'm, going and doing these live shows while the show is still going on Nebula. And where would I be if that happens? The show's follower count on Instagram and TikTok has like dramatically increased, more than doubled at least on both because of, what we've been able to do on Nebula. People who watch the show all over the world or on like clips on YouTube are also more aware of it than before. So, obviously, like, I'd love to be able to keep doing it in this form, but like, I'll always benefit from the fact that this show was on Nebula, even if it's not always on Nebula, because of the way that they kind of arrange this like very creator friendly ownership. Whereas if I had sold it to Netflix, and they were banging down my door, obviously, if I had sold it to Netflix, there's a world where I get paid once. They're like, okay, you're not hosting the show anymore, Chandler. No one knows who you are. And then maybe it's a success, but if it's not, then they can just end it and not allow me to do anything with it anymore. So that's, the arrangement here where like I've both like gotten to kind of maintain the integrity of, of what the show was before and will be able to continue to do so no matter what happens. Is a real credit to Dave and everybody at Nebula. Because I just think that you'd be hard pressed to find other places where you could get the upside of any kind of additional audience without having to sacrifice those things.
I want to talk about the fun stuff. I want to talk about the show itself.
Let's do it.
So we were talking before we started recording about the recent episode of Abolish podcast, and that I took personally. But
your show has a concept, so you're safe. But Demi Adichiewebe's coming for the podcast without concepts.
Yeah, it was. Well, he was like, a title is not a concept, which I really did appreciate. We had a concept before we had a title, so I think
that's how you know it's good. Yeah,
that's how you know it's good. I assume it comes from a sort of contrarian nature that you must have in general, like. Or did the title come and then the concept? Here's a question for Abolish Everything.
Oh, yeah.
Was it a concept or a title first, and where did it come from?
Wow, I don't know if I can remember if I had the title or concept first. It was all very quick, so I came up with it because I wanted to pitch shows, as post-vaccine era of the pandemic. There was this nonprofit comedy theater called the Squirrel Comedy Theater, founded by former UCB people before UCB returned. And they were taking pitches for shows, and I just wanted to get back out there and do more stuff. And so I knew that I wanted to do a show that was built around a few things. One is that, again, the speechwriter in me, I'm so much more comfortable delivering remarks than I am like doing stand-up comedy, as it were. Like, I cannot do the sort of pretending that I didn't come up with this in advance that stand-up requires. And so I love the idea of like, all right, let's have all these comedians give a speech where they can like have it meticulously written down and consult their remarks and that. And then I also knew that I wanted a show that that brought passion out of people, because I feel like so much of what I dislike about what I see in live comedy sometimes is that kind of, oh, who cares, kind of attitude. I'm doing a show because I know I'm supposed to, but I don't really, I'm bringing a really low energy, and then the crowd kind of responds in kind. So the sort of, it could have been I love everything, and maybe that would be better, and maybe I should make a spin-off now. But I think
I vote for that, by the way. I do think that would be good, because I like Cinema Sins does need a Cinema Wins.
Yes, right? Exactly.
And this one should be hosted by Dean Chandler.
Right, with a handlebar mustache and so forth. So that was kind of, but it's just like, it is just so true that so much of what we naturally gravitate toward in comedy is observing the things that aren't quite working and calling them out. I do think that's a more natural inclination. And so this is just like taking it to the extreme. And I feel like what is most successful when people do the show is when it's something that, like, you might normally talk about it on stage, like, oh, I'm mildly annoyed by this thing, and just being like, no, screw it. Like, make the case. Why is it the worst thing in the entire world? And I just find that gets an energy out of people that shifts them into an unexpected gear. And then having a panel of improvisers called the political establishment that wants to keep everything then allows that exact thing on the opposite side. And you could argue, they're the villain of the show, but they love everything. They want to keep everything exactly the way that it is. So you do get both sides of the argument that way.
Even those dynamics, in the times that we live in, that those seem really significant, to have one person trying to change the status quo in a shadowy group on the other side.
Yes,
trying to keep things as they are. And it makes me curious if, in these times, do people ever endeavor to introduce concepts that are sort of politically sensitive? And do you have, is there structure in place to discourage people from doing that? Or does that happen? And if so, how do you manage it? So in the casting process, I really try to pick people who, it's not so much that I want to avoid anything that's, politically polarizing, but just that I don't want any of the sort of racism, sexism, homophobia, or just evil takes that you could have, nor do I want them to force the panel to express those takes. So, yes, abolishing racism would be great, but forcing Andy Vega on the panel to make the case for it, maybe not so entertaining. So I do definitely I try to cast people who I just think are going to have just more of an interest in the silly and the absurd and goofier topics. Because that does, stuff that splits the room and that you could have a legitimate debate about. Nothing that's so obvious that it should be abolished. And then we do explicitly say hey, this is the kind of stuff that works if you pick a topic that is sort of indefensible on the other side, then it's going to kill the momentum of the show. So please don't do it. But ultimately, we do give people creative control. Once they're up on the stage, they can do whatever they want. They send scripts and slides and stuff in advance, and we advise them about what we think will work or not. But I really like for it to be a showcase of comedians as they are. So every once in a while, there will be something that touches upon something a little more serious, like Yadoye Travis abolished the law. I love Yadoye. Yeah. Yadoye is so funny. And in that, he had some really genuine, heartfelt, honest talk about it went a million different sort of philosophical directions, but he name checked the genocide in Palestine, for example. And it's I'm totally fine with and support people using the show as a platform to, legitimately touch upon issues of social justice and make and do what is truly provocative comedy, because provocative comedy, as it's been historically defined and has been defined lately, is okay, I'm doing a hack joke based on stereotypes or whatever.
which is actually, I find, to be the least interesting, it's antagonistic, but I don't think it's actually provocative in the sense that it's like expanding the scope of what comedy is. But on sort of a sort of progressive standpoint, yeah, like people can totally touch upon that. It's just that then when we go to the panel, they're going to not probably rebut that part. They're gonna find some other little thing. Oh, here's some, how do you present this? Or like, you made a pop culture reference and I'm just gonna riff on that. Like, they're free to just make jokes too. Like, they don't have to like stay rigidly in the like, let's analyze this argument. Like, sometimes they will just find some non sequiturs to say and keep the crowd laughing. And ultimately, that is the number one goal, is just like high energy, lots of fun, like just funny wins every time within the scope of like, let's be respectful of everyone and not make anyone feel excluded.
Like, for instance, if someone were to feel passionately about prison abolitionism,
right?
Like, it would be pretty tough to make a panel be like, no, prisons are like, prisons are great.
Yeah, and it's also like, would the set be funny to begin with, right? It's like, you could make a really excellent and compelling case, but I think that on our show,
even you could make some. You could probably make some jokes,
right?
Like, they'd have to be pretty like, targeted and brilliant, but like,
yes,
you're not going to want to make a panel defend the prison industrial complex.
And I mean, look, we do. The other thing is that these people take on a satirical persona. So like, in all likelihood, what they would probably say is something like, but how will my daddy make money if we don't, have this institutionalized labor or whatever? And it's like, they could probably find a way to make it funny, but that is like really tricky and advanced. And it's like, let's make it easier on everybody if we can. But I could imagine a world where it's like, someone takes the next step and they're like, yes, I'm a prison abolitionist, and that's why we need to abolish walls. If there were no walls, then there would be no prisons. And like, they could like bring it 1 degree more absurd, and so still talk about something real, but also give us something worth debating that like we actually are forced to consider. All right, in your crazy world that you're building, could we actually live in a world without walls? Would it be worth it?
This is my chance to plug my proposal website, shootmenintospace.com.
It's a great website.
Which I guess wouldn't really fit for Abolish Everything, because I don't really believe in abolishing men, but I do think we need to create a baseline where we see what happens if they are not here.
I feel like it would work brilliantly on the show. In fact,
we bring them back at some point. This is, and I emphasize over and over, it's not a penalization. It's an experiment. The orbital space stations would be super nice, like plenty of room and food and porn and
give them their utopia.
All 4 food groups.
And that's great. And then we just see what happens if they're not here.
Right.
And
so
then
I feel
it's like an elimination diet.
The way I would construct it would maybe be like, abolish return flights from space for men.
One-way tickets only. Actually, and even then, I mean, it doesn't work for your show, because it's really like, I thought this out. You look at the website.
Right. It's too real of a proposal. It's unrebuttable.
It's so solid. I've thought of everything. I swear.
But I will say,
there are some further things that need study, like the age. Like, I don't know if I want to set a firm age for like boys into men. I guess I have to say boys to men. Like, I think age is too random. So you have to do something like hormonal. Like, are you going to measure? Or are you going to go by behavior? And so I think a subcommittee of like moms and teachers should be impaneled to like figure out like what age would be appropriate, the age of accountability.
Right. And so wait, is it vibes based? Like is it, are you guilty until proven innocent, or is it truly like a blanket, like, nope, like all men at some point will go to space? Okay. Sure.
Trans people get to decide. Trans men, like non-binary people, obviously, like don't have, I mean, they could decide if they wanted to, but like are perfectly welcome. Trans men are not the problem.
Right.
And so they might want to go because it's going to be awesome. Like, it's going to be pretty fun. There is a particular station, if a man chooses to not want to be around queer people or people of color, they get their own space station. We take no responsibility. Like, that's just, they're on their own. But I imagine the other space stations would be pretty cool. You know?
So we're talking, I mean, you're delving into space segregation, but good.
Well,
it's like,
I mean, just imagine what the space station full of like homophobic racists would be like.
It's called the comedy mothership.
They just get to, we encourage them to look at the results of their actions and beliefs. I think it would be its own kind of experiment, right? Take a look at what you've built here. Do you think it's working? Also, no custodial services for that substation at all. So it might become uninhabitable. Yeah. In which case, again, like, look at what you've done. Think about it. Also, those are the last people we return. We return men in tranches. I use the metaphor of the elimination diet.
Right.
Like, you want to bring back maybe the young people first. You want to bring back like the bisexual or gay people first. You want to bring back, you're going to bring back the people who people who've had some good behavior. And then
we can figure out where the problem truly lies. Yeah.
There is a backup site, shootmenintothesun.com, but not there. Okay. Just not there.
Well,
I appreciate it. I wish it worked for the show. I really do. But I think it's both too well thought out and subtle.
It needs to be stupider to work on this show. But I will say, although my consent is not required, I do consent to this
it's just an experiment. I promise it'll be fun. I promise. Not a penalty. We don't know how long it's going to be. Just until we figure out what is going on, as one of our great thinkers said. Just going to stop it until we figure out what's going on.
I'll bring the Doritos and Dr. Pepper.
Oh, God, not you too.
I'm sorry. You're great. You see, the thing is, even the good ones. That's actually very clear on the website. Even the good ones.
I totally get it. I really do. Something I find genuinely inspirational about the show that you've created. It sort of gets at what you said about your realization that you weren't comfortable doing the sort of presentation in comedy. That's the standard sort of fake conversational. I just thought it as stream of consciousness. So you were able to create a platform, a presentation, a show that allowed you to engage and present comedy in the way that you felt was most comfortable for you, most effective for you, and you're inviting comics on to sort of engage with comedy that same way and building this whole different way to engage. And I just think that's such a cool idea because there are a lot of people who approach comedy, entertainment, music a bunch of different ways and may not feel that there's a seat at the table for them to do things in the way they want to do them right now. Yeah. So, I mean, as much as you can remember, like, what was the process of trying to find the platform that felt right for you to create it and present it to people?
I mean, it was a lot of like trial and error over the years. Like, I hosted all kinds of different variety shows that felt like they scratched like different itches. I did like my kind of YouTube parody, like rip off of like The Daily Show because I was obsessed with late night. That's one element of me. I did a lot of like, what comedians may derisively refer to as homework shows, where it's like built around a hyper specific theme because I love like research and digging into, one topic like really deeply more than like broadly touching upon a lot of different stuff. And so it was like a lot of like, this isn't quite right, that isn't quite right kind of stuff. I did a lot of improv. And what I found was I love the feeling of being on my feet, backed into a corner, trying to be funny. But I wasn't so good at the living under imagined circumstances. I would get the feedback of, Chandler, you're just being Chandler up there. And so I was like, well, how can I be Chandler? How can I like embrace that kind of energy and structure of a late night show? How can I still get to do my research and thoughtfully structured essays, comedy essays, effectively, And so I think that it was like really trying to like piece those things together. And I really liked the element, I still wanted to do something that felt satirical, so that even though we shy away from like overly serious presentations about things that really should be abolished, the panel is an element that like allows us to make fun of the, sort of lizards in congressional hearings that are, sort of like clinging on to power and like being completely idiotic while holding on to it. So there's all kinds of like built-in moments where we get, them to kind of make fun of what's happening in the world and the worst people in it, while hopefully avoiding bumming people out too much. So yeah, I think it took like, I guess I started in 2014 in New York, and was making like goofy sketch comedy videos back home in Houston before that. It was a long time of like just making stuff and trying stuff until something started to click. And then what I found was when I did it for a year at Under St. Mark's, we didn't really build much of an audience within the Squirrel Comedy Theater, but everybody who did, like so many people who did the show and came to the show would go out of their way to tell me like not just good set, man, and then avoid eye contact and go home, but they would be like, this format really works. It's so much fun, like for the participants and for the audience, because there is that, we encourage people to cheer and boo and participate, non without words, so they're not heckling, but like still feel like they're kind of a part of something. And so all of that added up. And the other thing that I will say is I really try now when I produce shows, and it might seem obvious, but it's like I really try to interrogate like, why would someone come to this ever? And like what benefit does the audience get from doing this other than just like, okay, someone I know needs to be supported and I'm going to do this. And so the sort of audience participation element, the fact that they pick a winner, the fact that there's like this ritualistic element to it, and the fact that the format is the same every time. So if you like it once, you'll hopefully like it again. These were also things that I like really tried to be cognizant of in producing, because I've just seen so many shows where it's like, again, I'm supposed to have a show because that's what you do to climb, so I'm going to do one. And so, yeah, so it is hyper specific to me, but it's just the truth that like, if you make something that you think, I wanted to make something that I'd be desperate to see, and I wanted to make something I'd be desperate to be a part of if I wasn't already a part of it. And so while that does tailor to my exact needs, like you have to think that if you authentically feel that way about the thing that you're making, that the odds are there will be, you don't even need that many, but if like a few thousand people in the world or 100 people in your city that feel the same way and are excited about the same things, that's a formula for success after a lot of trial and error. So that's what I have to say about that.
Well, thank you for your time and sharing your story. I think in a lot of ways, it's really inspirational that you've been able to build your own thing and define and build the success of it in like unconventional ways. And I think, there's a lot here for people trying to figure out how to make being a creator in comedy these days work for them.
Well, I want to thank you guys for having me. And I just want to reiterate, like, I am such a big fan of this podcast, and what you guys are doing has been so like eye-opening for me, where you've had multiple of my heroes on this show, and like hearing them talk about how challenging that it remains, even when they've reached what I perceive to be the mountaintop, like I could imagine a world where we fear people getting discouraged by this. Like, oh no, even if a person this talented and successful, doesn't feel like they've quote unquote made it, like, where's the hope for me? But to me, it's liberating to like hear other people talk about the challenges that they face, because it just means like, all right, I'm not alone, and it's not unusual for me to be feeling this way. So I really appreciate you guys creating like this candid space for that, because it's a must listen for me.
I mean, I think the benefit is there's a lot. The reason why we started it, right? Hearing the people that you think of being secure as having their own precarity, I also think encourages to think in terms of systems and what can protect us as a community, as a system, right? And not just like, oh, if I make it, then I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
So I think that that's how you can start to think about unions and start to think about wage parity. And you can build in, hopefully, to your vision of what our creative economy should be, protections that would apply to everyone, including those at the quote unquote top, because the people who really don't have to worry are few and far between, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the 1% of the 1% of the 1% in these fields that we care about. So that's my hope.
Well, thank you very much again, Chandler. Thanks for coming and sitting with us today.
Most important thing we have to ask them, Mike.
Oh gosh, I almost forgot. It's actually the most important thing, and I almost forgot. This is a podcast about creators trying to navigate this economy, and because of that, it's the most important thing that we turn the show over to our guests to let people know how they can best support them. So, Chandler, this is the time where we ask you to plug.
Okay, great. So yeah, please check out Abolish Everything on Nebula. Go.nebula.tv/abolish. It is, first of all, there are free trials. So, if anybody listening just can't afford to pay for a streaming service, you can still check out the show that way. If you can spare it, it really is like, I can't speak highly enough of what Nebula is doing to give creators creative freedom, control of their work, ownership of their work. I do think it's a new kind of model that, is just like, I think is less precarious and scary than a lot of the existing ones. And my hope is that the more people support it, the more creative people can get to be a part of it. But otherwise, you can also check out the show at Abolish Everything NYC on TikTok and Instagram for our clips, and I'm at Chandler J. Dean on everything.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much. It was a delightful talking to you, and I look forward to the next season of the show.
Likewise, guys, we're going to figure out what you're going to abolish, Anna. And don't think you're safe, Mike.
I never feel that way.
Mike wants to abolish teaching rap.
Oh, God, yes. I do.
Really?
I do. Yo, that's, you know what? She nailed it first try.
Mike.
Anna.
It's time for plugs.
Oh, my goodness. Is it that time again?
It's time for plugs. What do you want to plug?
I want to plug my shows. I got shows. The Northeast, US and Canada, Brooklyn, Montreal, Toronto, Cleveland, and Lansing, Michigan. And in EU and UK with my pal Video Dave. We're going to Amsterdam, Germany, and a bunch of places in the UK. And in the meanwhile, I'm at home streaming on Twitch, doing the morning show 3 days a week, and putting up a bunch of stuff on YouTube. Now, Anna, what you got going on?
Well, speaking of YouTube.
Speaking of.
I have been doing a daily morning reel/YouTube short for the entire month of March, and it's been a really interesting experiment. And I'm planning on doing like a video about the experiment, which will be out, in early April. It's actually been as interesting as a creative exercise as it has been about growing the audience and the channel. Like, have you ever done anything like that, Mike? Have you ever done like a challenge to yourself about doing something creative with a daily discipline? I
don't think I have. I don't think I've ever done that.
Well, it's been very good for getting over my perfectionism. That's for sure. And then I'm planning on doing another writing workshop soon. If people are interested in that, they should go check out my Patreon, which is where it will probably get announced and generally happen. And that's and that's patreon.com/AnnaMarieCox2. And that's with one N. And then still writing for the New Republic, and follow me on Instagram and or Blue Sky, because those are places where other announcements come. Oh, and then the other podcasts Space the Nation, which is about science fiction. We recently did Project Hail Mary, which was a fun watch. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I have a feeling it's going to be like feel good hit of the summer kind of thing. Not like Sinners, not like a smart movie that is a feel good movie because of its creative genius, but more like it has Ryan Gosling in it.
That's the feel good part. Is just him.
I mean, it's about humanity conquering a existential threat.
I could see that being timely.
I was just thinking, you and I never really got to have our full conversation about Sinners, and I was just thinking about in terms of what the hit of the year is, and how, I don't know, does it say something about this year that the hit is something that's purely escapist and has a message of no, really, we're going to be fine.
I feel like that's like traditional Hollywood blockbuster, and last year was an outlier.
Yeah, probably so. All right, well, Mike, we're going to talk again next week.
We sure are.
Past Due is hosted by Anna Marie Cox and Open Mike Eagle. It's produced by Andrew Steven. You can find more at pastduepodcast.com. Help support the show by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/pastdue. You'll get bonus content, extended interviews, and more. As always, if you like what we're doing, another way to help is by subscribing, sharing the show, and leaving us a review. Thanks for listening.